Hello and welcome to the Wake Up with Gratitude podcast. I'm your host, Julie Boyer. And this morning, I am so incredibly grateful to be interviewing a local entrepreneur. So I want to say welcome to Nicolle Nattrass. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh,
Showcasing Lantzville.
Yes, Lantzville, local,
Yay!
not just Nanaimo. We are Lantzville
Lantzville.
entrepreneurs. For those who are wondering what Lantzville is, well, if you're new to the podcast, you haven't heard me talk about it, but I do talk about it in my intro a lot. I love taking photos from our beautiful Lantzville beaches here. We are a tiny seaside village, 3,500 residents, and we are proud to live in our little village. So Nicolle is an actor, director, playwright by profession. She also is an author. She wrote a beautiful book, Just the Two of Us, a soft place for tender hearts to land, especially for children. It's a creative journaling experience, and she'll explain all of that. It's a book that she put together during COVID-19 times. She's also a certified addiction counselor and a creative journaling facilitator. So I have to say that, Nicolle, it certainly sounds like your story has a lot of twists and turns and forks in the road, especially during this time when the arts are basically being pushed aside. And we'll get into that conversation, but I'd love to hear just a little bit about your story, how you went from getting into acting and then writing and journaling and addiction counselor. I'd just love for you to share that story with us.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me to be on. Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge the land that I'm on today. Very grateful to the Snanawas First Nation and Snuneymuxw First Nation to be on their territory today. And I'm actively working to be a better ally in my life here. So just want to say that. Whenever I hear myself being introduced, I always think like, how can I do those many things? Like so it's been interesting because I like variety, and I'm really ruled by creativity in everything I do. And I went to theater school at U of Vic. I graduated in 1991 and became a professional actor, worked across the country and professionally. And I started writing my own plays primarily because I wanted to hear different voices. I wanted to tell different stories. And I also got to a point in my career where I realized it was all about me. And I needed to do something. And so I walked up to this treatment center in Toronto, right across from the Art Gallery of Ontario. I don't know, on Dundas Street. You probably know it.
Yeah.
And
that's something we have in common is we're both from the Toronto area. So yeah, I remember what a beautiful place. Anyway,
it's so nice.
Arts.
Yeah.
So you walk into this treatment center.
It was a women's center, and I asked to volunteer. And so I volunteered there for a year, and ended up being nominated for Volunteer of the Year. And I was surprised. And the manager at the time said, you're really good here. Do you want to earn your certification while you work? And I was like, okay, as long as I can still, pursue some of my other theater and film and TV career. And she said, yeah, why don't we do it on a part-time basis? So I actually received clinical supervision over 4 years, which was just an amazing experience. I'm so grateful to Betty Walker, who saw something in me, and it changed my world, as in every way, as an actor, as a writer, as a human being, working frontline with women ages 15 to 99 at a 21-day treatment center. It was incredible. So from there, I got my certification, and I started to use journaling work with women in the center. And I have been an avid journaler since, my little dear diary in grade 5. And I've always used it as an artist, as a creator. And I started to see that I could use it with the women and encourage them to journal for self-care. And so I launched a course called Creative Journaling: The Promises of Recovery for men and women in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction and their families. And that's kind of how I started to marry these two sides, the creative side and the counseling facilitation side. And so, yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell how I ended up where I am.
And I actually want to just point out something that I think a lot of creative people struggle with is the marrying of like a more like work kind of profession with the creative side. I know it's something that I struggled with for many, many years. It took me a long time to figure out
Yeah,
what Wake Up with Gratitude actually was, right? I had
yeah.
the name and the vision for that business, but I didn't know how to like put all the pieces together. It took me quite some time. So I love
Mhm.
that your story, brings those pieces together, and then you're serving people in a way that they likely were not being served before, because sometimes, when we're looking at a profession that's very rigid and has rules, it's harder to find space for creativity. So did you find that, you're working within an organization and an institution, when you first started bringing up this work, was it well received? Were people excited? No. Okay. Tell me about that.
No, well, I mean, now it is, right? Because the
Yeah.
scientific research is there that talks about what happens when we pick up a pen, what happens to our right and left brain. But at the time, it was like, oh, do you mean scrapbooking? We don't have time for scrapbooking. And right, so there was that. But I also created a course for the counselors, for the helping professionals, and it was certified. It's still available, certified by the Canadian Addiction Counseling Certification Federation. Say that 5 times fast. And so I saw that there was a need, right? I mean, burnout and service burnout is a huge thing, that I was watching counselors around me being stressed out and picking up secondary trauma. And I was like, this works, and the big piece too with journaling is that it's accessible. You don't need to have a lot of money to go to a spa for self-care. You can actually pick up a pen and a piece of paper and tune into yourself. And my work is really about no rules, so there's no right or wrong in the journaling. I've worked with people who have literacy issues, so it's really about freedom. And then I fall back on my creative training as an artist, where we get to bend the rules and have freedom of expression.
I think when you talk about this, their connection between physically holding a pen or a pencil or a marker or whatever, and what it
Yeah.
does to your brain, I agree. So I love to journal. Like you, I actually journaled from a very young age. This summer, actually, funnily enough, I burned my journals from high school because I kind of just started reading them and I'm like, this is actually really toxic what I was writing about. And it was definitely not a gratitude journal. I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
And I wanted to put that chapter in my life kind of to rest. And so I did that, which was really cool. But then I have boxes of journals. I actually just put 5 journals into my special journal box. I keep my journals. I love, for me, I write as a gratitude journal. And what I love is that even when the times were the toughest, I was still
Yeah.
writing in my journal. And I love that it keeps a record of my life, the good, the great, and the really crappy, but in a voice of gratitude. And when I first kind of went back to gratitude journaling, I was doing it on an old tablet. And I did that for a while. And then my whole document disappeared. And I said, you know
Wow.
what? Never again. I'm going back to the pen. And now when I encourage people to do gratitude journaling, I say, get yourself a pen or a colored marker, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but physically write in that book.
Yeah. It's amazing. And you can look at the science now.
Mm.
It's like when we pick up a pen, it's like we're giving the brain a massage. And yeah,
I
so
love that.
it's
I had
really,
not heard that before. I love that analogy. And one thing I do as well is when I journal, I actually use like cursive, like fancy
Mhm,
handwriting, which
mhm.
I don't really use anywhere else. I print everywhere else, but for some reason I choose. And again, it's because when you're connecting your letters like that, it has an effect on the brain. So I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
a lot of people listening to this podcast may already be doing their gratitude journaling, but maybe they're doing it on their phone or on a tablet, or maybe they're just, printing or whatever. And I love this like feeling of how it really is like the massaging of the brain by using a pen.
Did you know that doodling, I had the opportunity to work with an art therapist through the BC School of Art Therapy, and doodling is actually recommended. That is so nourishing for the brain, and they use that with stroke victims actually to get their brain reactivated. So it's not just words that you can connect to. Like someone could do a gratitude journal and just doodle, right? Like it's all about creative, whatever works for them, right?
And allowing yourself, right? Allowing myself to just put whatever I want on the page. No one's judging you. No one's looking at it. I imagine that when you're working with people that have been, that are going through rehab, that have been through trauma and that kind of thing, like, there's probably a lot of editing that goes on before they're comfortable writing.
Yeah. And we all have had our own, our own experiences and trauma. And I think that's kind of brings me back to why I titled my book A Soft Place for Tender Hearts to Land. Because I look around and I realize that we have a lot of people in the world who do not have that soft place to land without judgment, without feeling that someone is trying to better themselves off them. And so I feel it's really important to have a place to land, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. So we're missing a part of the story. So you're in Toronto.
Yeah.
You're working as an addiction counselor. You're working in theater. You're working in film.
Yeah.
You have this career. You meet a handsome man.
That's right.
So, because now you live in this tiny little seaside village of Lantzville. So there's a part of the story that we're missing. So how did you get from there, which really is like one of the film and theater meccas in Canada, Vancouver being the other, how did you end up over here on this island?
Well, I was born in Edmonton, so I went to school at U of Vic. My folks have always been in Lantzville.
Oh.
So when I was at U of Vic, I was always traveling, back home to visit my mom and dad. And I lived in Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, Victoria. And I fell in love in Toronto, and we were looking around at getting married. And the prices were just like insane. Like we were like, no, like we were never going to be able to afford to get married. We also couldn't afford a car in Toronto because of the insurance costs. We had a friend give us a car for $1. We even had a parking spot, and we couldn't afford the insurance in Toronto. It was crazy. Anyway, we came out here. I brought Paul out here to visit my folks, to meet the family. And we were walking by Coston Hall and the little church. And I was like, I wonder how much it would be to rent. And we contacted him, and he was like, I can't remember what it was. It was like $100. And I was like, what? Yeah. Like, what? And I was also very Toronto, like, why isn't he getting back to me like now? It's like island time, right? I had to get into like, okay. And I was like, and where do you drop off the keys? And they're like, at the video store. Okay. So we decided to fly out and get married here. And my husband's dad passed away, and he was in Edmonton, and we had to do a lot of different stuff with that. And I think after Paul's 10th flight back to Edmonton, we said, what if we just took a year off? And I actually saw an ad on Craigslist for a rental house in Lantzville. And I emailed him just on a whim. I thought, this will be funny. I'll just email them. And they said, judging from your surname, I know your mom and dad who are down the street. And I went, okay, I think we should do this. So we decided to move out, and then I got pregnant, which was, an amazing experience. And I was like, this is the place that I want to land.
I have to say, I've been here for 3 years in BC. We spent 10 months on the mainland. It was not the right place for us at all. I didn't even know that Vancouver Island was where I wanted to live, but I knew that where I wanted to live. It was crazy. I used to dream of living in a place that had mountains, but was close to the water. That was what I wanted. I just knew that that's where I needed to live, but I didn't know that it was Vancouver Island. And, it's not been easy for us to, stay here for the past couple of years. We've been through a lot of difficult family challenges, but I'm wearing a hoodie that says
Lantzville living.
Right? Because there is something really magic and special. I know everyone's like, we should probably stop talking about how great Lantzville is actually, because no, well, there is development. There's, you can come here, and yeah, it's a big change culturally from Toronto, Vancouver. The art scene is obviously very, very different, but we're in a very different world now. We're in a world where we have had to shift to doing things online.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, is how the arts have been so devastated. Like, there's so many things we can move online. Listen, my friend, her son and his girlfriend are community theater, but like at a higher level. Like, they're both studying, well, they were, now they're not in their program, to be professional actors.
Mm-hmm.
And they recorded a show, and then they streamed it via Twitch, right? That's being creative.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 100 people watching. It was great, but that's not live theater, right?
No.
Like, that's not the experience. So talk to me a little bit about, being someone who this was your world, how things have just really changed so dramatically.
Yeah. Well, they have, right? I mean, I'm less in shock than I was initially, certainly. Have had many contracts and stuff canceled as a result, and have watched a lot of my colleagues, from stage managers to lighting designers to set designers to actors, writers, have their world shift. And, I was fortunate in that I launched a creative journaling online course a year and a bit ago,
Okay.
which I was kind of resistant to for a while. And I'm really happy with the creation. But I feel really fortunate in that I've always juggled different opportunities. And so, I haven't been as hard hit. But I also have a new play that I've written, Suddenly 50, which, was supposed to be going up. And I did do a 30-minute kind of online Zoom thing. And I'm grateful for Zoom, but it was not the same. I don't want to launch a new play. Audience energy and feedback is so crucial to a new play. And I work and support new playwrights. And I just know that. So part of me is like, I don't really want to jump online with the theater thing. Many of my friends are, and it's great. But there's an exchange that happens that doesn't happen here. We can't connect with our body language really, from here up. There's a synergy that happens, and I'm certainly missing it. And, also, as we were talking before, there has been no phase 3 setup for theaters or the arts. It's been focused on movies, and that's been really disappointing. We know a lot of people are advocating for to be able to go back to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and also provide a part of our culture that is so critically important. And, it's interesting you mentioned about the like connection with the audience. So I had like almost like a dream, like a waking dream this morning about really missing speaking on stage in front of an audience.
Yeah.
I can do webinars all day long. I've been on Zoom since 2013. This is not new territory for me.
Yeah.
But like you said, I have like these special shoes that I would wear when I would speak. I have sparkly Converse that I wear with my dress or my skirt. Like it's like the act of performing, right? I mean, you can't see my shoes on Zoom. So, I mean, I could put them on, but it's not the same.
Yeah. And it's also like somatically, right? Like we pick
Yeah.
up energy from each other. And so, and a whole audience, you can do the same show every single night. And it's going to be different because of the audience, right? Some people are laughing more. Some people are crying more. It's like, you can't recreate that.
And even the like feeling of being backstage and
yes,
on, and just that energy and anticipation that you just don't feel the same on a Zoom meeting. So
yeah,
I want to just really, share with our audience that wherever you are, wherever you live, if you can put aside a little bit of money, maybe like have a little like social fun account for when you can be supporting, or if your theater group has even an online fundraiser, if you can spare a little bit of time or energy or money to support people who are going to need our support desperately when we figure out how to make this work, because it is a great tragedy. There's a lot that we've lost this year, but losing the arts, which we've been fighting for so many years too. Like arts have been, cut again and again. And when we get back to culturally who we are as human beings, this ability to express ourselves creatively.
And it's interesting, right? Too, like a few people have brought up, I don't know if you saw that Facebook meme, but something about, it's the first thing that everyone in the pandemic has gone to is like concerts, and like, where are the free concerts and musicians and artists offering generously all of, offerings, right? For positive mental health and all of that. So it is really important. Like,
like you said, for mental health. I mean, and that socialization and sharing the shared experience of going to the theater together is not something, again, you can replicate from on your couch. So, so hopefully we've planted a seed for people to just keep that in mind and to be aware. And I wanted to ask just a little bit more about this book, that you wrote, just the two of us. Who are the two of us that are in this book? What is it meant for? Who's your target audience that you're sharing this with?
It's for anyone who cares about children's mental health. So if you're a caregiver or a grandparent or a parent, it really is for a teacher, a counselor, nurse, doctors. I actually have to say that a doctor recently bought my book. She read it and she said, this needs to be in pediatric wards. She bought it. I was so, and she emailed me and she dropped it off at the Comox Hospital in the pediatric ward, because this is something that, a parent or caregiver would be able to do with a child who was, say, in the hospital. So it's really a trauma-informed approach for connection and attachment with your child, with a child, and to process what's going on. To connect, to process, to have that soft place to land. Kids are resilient, and kids are affected by what's going on around them. Both statements are true.
Yeah. And they also lack the maturity and the skills to express their feelings of loss.
Yeah.
Like as adults, and even I shouldn't say as adults, many adults still struggle with that as well. But there is trauma in living through a pandemic.
Yeah.
There's trauma in being cut off from your friends, your family, grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunts. That's traumatic for a child. And like you said, they'll bounce back, they're resilient. But I really love this. Like you said, it's trauma-informed work. And it's interesting. I'm excited. I'm going to hopefully be able to get my copy in the next few days from you. I'm so excited because when I started reading more about what this was about, I thought, what a great activity for my daughter and I to do together. And so
it's for family self-care, right? You don't need, and that's one thing that when I do the next print copy of it, I'm going to think about, because a lot of people think like, oh, well, I don't need to do it because, my child hasn't gone through trauma. It's just about connection and attachment. It's to catch everything. So it's to catch the good days, the crappy days. We all have them, right? Worries. And I go through in the book about different ways that you can use it with your child. But it's been an amazing tool. And, often your point that you made about, as adults, we have the vocabulary, we have I can call up my best friend and say, hey, Julie, I'm struggling about this right now, right? Yeah. A lot of kids don't have those skills. And what it does is it really captures the nonverbal. So I started doing this work with my son when he was 4.5, not by choice, but because we were in a traumatic car accident that changed our lives and changed the trajectory of our lives, and is still affects us today. And at 4.5, he had no words to describe what had happened. But when we sat down at the table with a really big journal, blank journal, we would draw and it would all come out. And it was incredible to witness it. And I really, really believe that if he was able to get the pain and a lot of it out, because what happens from an addiction counseling perspective is when we don't acknowledge pain, it goes underground. It builds, and it's like it gets, it's like a bucket, right? The book Fill the Bucket. Well, you can fill the bucket the other way with pain, right? And when we come and we go, I'm just gonna pretend this pain doesn't exist and paint it pink. If we do that for a long time, that has consequences, right? And then we see the acting out of the pain that's gone underground, because actually all it needs is just to have a soft place to land. What if I'm not jumping in to fix it? What if I'm not, as a parent, instructing you do it this way, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing a fire engine? It has to be red. No. So this book is actually about teaching. It's taught me how to let go with my perfectionism, my instruction, and actually to give the gift of presence, right? And once I do that, it's amazing what happens. It's like, and when I'm having a bad day, I can sit down at the journal because I have my one page and he's got his page, and I'll be doing this. I get a break at the same time and I'm drawing this, and he comes up and he's like, "What are you doing?" "I'm kind of having a crabby day. So I'm taking these stickers and I'm gonna crab it out on the page."
Yeah.
What am I modeling?
Yeah.
I'm just modeling, I have feelings.
Yeah.
I'm going to express them. No one's getting hurt by my crabby feelings. I don't need to pink paint them, right?
Definitely. Definitely. I want to pick up on one little thing that you said, which was about attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And something that we might not be thinking about is that just because we're together all the time, because we're definitely more with our children than we were ever before, likely.
Yeah.
Especially with, not having activities and play dates and all these things and birthday parties, right?
Yeah.
But being together does not actually mean we're creating attachment and bonds. And so even if you're looking at the book just from that perspective, I think it can be an incredible way to add, to build that relationship with your child. And like you said, model the behavior that, allows for expression of how we're feeling in a safe way. So I'm excited. So we'll talk about me getting my copy in the next couple of days. I'm very excited to get started with that.
Yeah, me too.
So I've loved our conversation. We've kind of touched on so many different things, which is great. I love that we've been able to kind of go on this journey together. We talked a little bit about gratitude journaling, but what other ways do you personally, how does gratitude fit into your day or your week or your practices? I'd love to hear about that.
I like the word thankful. So I've worked and appreciate. So one of the things that I like to do at dinner, I don't do it every night, but I'd like to say, what are we grateful for? I am grateful for, so that's a good practice for us. Yeah. But the other piece with journaling is that I find I respond to other words than grateful. So I will say, I'm thankful for, and give myself a writing prompt. Right now, I appreciate. Because it seems to like draw me into the moment more. I just end up kind of being right there present when I make the writing prompts more accessible for me, I guess. So that's a really, really big thing that I do. And the other piece is that they say in the morning, the big piece for me is to have like 3 minutes, 3 to 7 minutes, where I can tune in to my breath with my journal in a cozy spot and kind of think of one thing that I can be 100%, like immediately when I think of it, makes me smile. That tunes me in so much to gratitude. And, you know, like even just sitting here right now, I could do it. It's just like, what is the thing that I can think of that immediately when I think of, it delights you, it lights me up. To me, that's tuning into gratitude.
Oh, that was juicy. I love that. And I haven't heard that before. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. But
I
do you know
love
what
that,
I was
we're
thinking
here.
about?
What's that?
But do you know what I was thinking about?
Do you want to share?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Jubes.
Ooh, my daughter would be
Colors.
there with you. She ate all the jubes off her gingerbread house within a day. I love it. I love that. There's just so many ways to practice gratitude. We're closing in on 100 episodes of the podcast.
Wow.
And I'm still being surprised by different ways that people work with gratitude, like you said, with different words, being thankful or appreciation.
Yeah.
All of these things are ways that we can deepen our practice, or maybe just like one little thing that Nicolle has shared is like, that's what I want to start doing today. So
Cool.
Nicolle, I know if we're local, it's easy for us to connect with you and get a copy of your book. But if we're listening and we might not be from the Lantzville area, how do we connect with you?
You can go to my website. It's NicolleNattrass.com. And I have to mention that my book is available as a digital copy if you want to. But it's available also at Cool & Child is carrying the hard copies, as well as a journal together kit, which is at Amethyst Forest. Both of those are in Nanaimo. I also am so excited to share that there's a store in Cumberland, little village store, that is carrying my hard copy book. And the super, super, super big news I'm excited about is Caversham Booksellers. Do you know it?
I looked it up. I was
in
so
downtown
excited.
Toronto, one of my favorite bookstores. It's a specialty mental health psychology bookstore. They have just picked it up, so I'm really, really excited about it.
Yay!
Yeah. So, and it's really, my first book, and hopefully not my last. But I would not recommend anyone trying to write a book during a pandemic.
It's interesting. I think you're the third person I've had on the podcast, though, that has written a book during the pandemic. So I guess everyone deals with their pandemic feelings in a different way. So amazing, Nicolle. I'm so excited. I will be getting a physical copy of it. And,
thank you.
We find you. I know you're on Facebook a lot. That's where you and I connect the most. So I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes for everybody.
Sure. And they can have a sample, like download a sample chapter too. If you just want to print it off on my website too.
Absolutely. It's a great way to know if it's the right book for you. So
thank
you again, Nicolle. I've just really enjoyed our time together. It's been so wonderful.
Thank you for having me. Go Lantzville, go.
I know, right? Got to support. We're micro local and supporting each other the best we can. But what I love about the podcast vehicle is that people from around the globe, I know this podcast gets listened to in many, many countries around the world, and they can connect with your work. Like you said, they can connect with it online, digital copy, all that, even if they're not in our little village of Lantzville. Thanks again, Nicolle.
Thank you.
All right, stop recording.
Yay.